Hello and welcome to Dean Park Station, and this is the October 2018 update. I've been focusing heavily on one section of the layout, and I'll take you through all the progress that I've made there, and I've also been progressing on other little bits and pieces that have been on my work desk for quite some time. So if you have any questions of what you see, please, as always, get in touch. Cheers! In my last video, I'd showed you the progress of the cutting section at the TMD, and I'd showcased some of the details and whatever I'd added. However, a lot of people were writing in saying that I didn't have any access for the workers to get down to the relay boxes without walking through a tunnel or being dropped off by a locomotive. So what I did was I tracked down these industrial ladders at scalemodelscenery.co.uk. The link is in the description of the video for this particular kit. You get 4 in a pack, they're very easy to build, they're made from plastic, and in this case I've just basically primed it and painted it in, I think it was Humbrol 64, and then added some weathering using some powder. It doesn't show particularly well on the camera just with the light shining, but trust me that it's been weathered down. I might add safety cages to it in the future, but being the 1980s ladder were probably constructed in the 60s, you know, there is a chance that safety rings and whatever on ladders were not the norm. But now that gives access for the workers to get down to the relay boxes. As you can see there, I've had a second man keeping watch while one of the workers accesses the cabinets. As I indicated in my introduction, I've spent a lot of my time focusing on one particular area, and this particular area has been the building site corner at the east end of the layout. I might have covered last month, kind of giving you an indication of what I was planning to do. However, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've gone to town on it and I've started to add in the details, and I'll take you through what I've done, hopefully in roughly the right order I did them. First off, I picked out the footprints of the buildings where they were going to be, and as you can see there's a kind of uncovered bald area. That's where the porter cabin is going to be, and you can see the wires are sticking up there so it can be connected to the lighting for the porter cabin. The houses are all set in their own footprint, so there's no gravel underneath the houses, and I'll cover when I change the view of the camera. I'll show you that up close and explain why I've done that. Then what I did was I got some postcrete, basically stuff to hold your fence posts in place in your garden. And you get this at DIY stores. I picked mine up at B&Q, and you get a 20 kilogram bag, which is far too much. They don't seem to do them in any smaller sizes, and it only costs a £5, so you know it's not a great expense. I covered the area in PVA where I wanted this to be, and I basically sprinkled it from a sieve, because it's quite, there's lots of stones in it and you want it quite fine, so I used a kind of old pasta drainer type sieve with small enough holes in it to let the bigger stones get caught up, but to let the sandy gravel get through, and I gently covered it. I then wet it with water. The reason I put the PVA underneath was just to hold it in place while I sorted out the position of it all, you know, and tidied up areas I didn't want it to. I could brush it off without disturbing the whole lot. And then I wetted it with just one of these water sprays that you'd find in a barber's or a hair salon, covering obviously the back scenes in polythene to keep all the water spray off. And I let it set. It says it sets in 20 minutes. You're better giving it a lot longer than that. After I did that, I blended some earth and dark earth scatters on top of the actual postcrete once it was dry, and maybe just blended in some other scatters and a little bit more postcrete to give it variations in tone, and you'll be able to see if I shift some of these details. There's darker areas and lighter areas, and more kind of grey areas, lighter brown areas, darker brown areas, because obviously the mud and earth mixed in with building rubble and waste, it's going to give a varying tone. So that's how I did the actual base layer, if you like. The houses then went on to their footprint, if you like, and then I started adding in the fencing, which you'll see at the front there, security chain link fencing. And I'll shift the camera to give you a better view of that intricate kit. The fence is a kit from Scale Model Scenery, and it comes with posts with the crank head style that is in front of me here. You can also get the ones that haven't got the cranked top on them. You get nylon mesh to represent obviously the chain link, and you get thin, very thin fishing wire, for the use of a better word, to feed through the holes in each post to represent the barbed wire. Now the kit gives you enough to do around about 1 metre. I needed over a kit because I've got about 1.5 metres to do. I primed them, airbrushed them with Humbro greys, and then finished it off with a Precision Paints weathered concrete. I then weathered them down with some Humbro weathering powders, sealed them with matte varnish, drilled the holes, placed them in the layout, put them in place with Rocket rapid glue, and then set about doing the mesh, which you cut from a larger sheet into strips. The instructions are very clear, very simple to follow. It's very time consuming to put on the actual chain link mesh. You have to glue them to each individual post, and being very thin and fine, it does take a bit of persuasion and many bits of glue on your fingers to get every post glued with the nylon mesh. But as you can see, the glue dries clear. There's no sign of glue on the mesh, and it looks like they are part of a fence and not just glued on. So I think it really looks quite smart, to be honest. Feeding through the nylon fishing wire was time consuming, but rewarding when you see the outcome. I mean, you could see them there, and obviously you glue it at one end, you pull it taut at the other end, you glue it, hold it, and then snip off the excess, and then you've got your 3 barbed wire representations, and it looks like a chain link fence that you would have around any industrial or private land. Now you can ask why I used this fencing at this particular area, so just kind of zoom out a little bit. This area here was supposed to have been an ex-industrial area, maybe a factory or a mill or something like that, that's been demolished and cleared, and the houses are now going on the land. So the fence was there before the houses, if you like. So that's why I've used this style of fencing, and not just say, garden wooden fence panels. It's got to give the impression that the fence was there long before the construction of the houses started. As I come round the back of one of the houses, you'll see I've dug a trench, or the JCP is digging a trench. How I did that was, the baseboard sections, I deliberately had a join, because I always wanted to add this in if it was a building site, so I made it a join, and I removed the section of ply, got my jigsaw, cut an L shape in it, glued some 3mm ply underneath, and then placed the panel back in, sealed it into place before I put down the postcrete scatter. That's given me the depth of the width of a bit of ply, and the actual width of the trench is just over 10-11mm in width to allow the JCB bucket to look like it's actually dug out the earth. And you'll notice, you might pick it up in the camera, but there's earth piled up at the side where the JCB just dumped it after digging it out of the trench. The details like the workmen and the barriers, the red and white barriers there in the distance, they're just placed there just now to give you a bit more detail for the video, but I'll be finalising all the positions of that in the next couple of weeks. Down the right hand side there, I've just put some light undergrowth, some underbrush and some scatters just to try and blend it into the back scene, to give the impression that that will be cleared at some point to fit another row of houses, access roads for the residents and all that kind of housing scheme detail. We're right at the back of the building site now, and as I bring the camera up, you'll see a couple of mounds of rubble and earth there that have been cleared, possibly to dig the foundations of the house next to it. And again, that's just piled up postcrete. I'll be using some scatters to give that a variation in tone. This is the footprint of the house, the bungalow. What I did was I put it in position, and then I put the postcrete down and I kind of piled it up against the house, and then carefully removed the house. So there is a lip there and a ridge, so when you put the house in, it's not like it's sitting on top, it looks like it's sitting in, and that the earth is naturally positioned around it. And if you do miss any bits, it's quite easy just to sprinkle a bit of postcrete on and wet it, and it sticks. So that's where the houses will be going, and the same for every house that I've got on the site. It's set into the rubble and the earth, not sitting on top of, so there's no unsightly gaps. A lot of the details you're seeing are either Langley model kits, Ten Commandments kits, or scale model scenery kits. Now, I went through quite a few of the scale model scenery kits in a previous video, and I'll put the link at the top of the screen now. There are a good variation in building merchant kits that you get at scale model scenery, from 3D printed kits to laser cut, and little kits you can make it yourself with paper wraps. Great variation in what you can actually do to personalise your layout. One thing I did get was this little dumper truck, and this is a Langley's model kit, and it's been fully assembled and weathered, and you can see there with the rust creeping into the bucket. I've got to put a load of sand in there or rubble or something, but it's all been detailed, and there's some light weathering on the tyres. I've got to put a little bit more on, and rusting coming around the bodywork and see there, and the actual tilt bucket. Let's say it's a Langley's models kit. It's about £13 or £14, so I'll only be adding one to the layout. They're very expensive actually, but they're good quality kits, so I suppose you get what you pay for. I did the same with the cement mixer, which I think I've kind of covered in a previous video as well. Painted yellow, heavily rusted, and I've got a bit of weathering on there, and that goes beside the workman with the shovel and the bags of sand and other bits of building stuff. One thing I'm finally getting around to putting on the layout is the overhead masts. I built these back last summer, I think it was July or August 2017. I'll put the link at the top of the screen to show you how I made them. They've been sitting up the back of the layout there, all laid out, waiting to be placed on, but I had to do a lot of things before I placed them on because due to the fragile nature. So I had to get the S&T made, I had to get the caravan site made, I had to get the building site made, and all the scenery and greenery round about. So it's just a case of coming along and putting these in place. This has just been lightly put in place. It's not sitting at the right height, it might not even be sitting level just now, but you can see the two mast at the side there with all the wire and the register arms and the insulators, and they'll pose for the 3 lines coming round, and I've got a dozen of those going all the way round to the building site end, joining on to the dapple masts at the level crossing, and where the camera is now will also be masted with these scratch built Mark IIIA masts, which you see on the East Coast main line, which is obviously what I'm modelling. You could have gone for the lattice arm gantries, but they're most prolific for the West Coast areas, so I wanted to kind of get it as authentic as I could for the East Coast. So what I've done with these in the last month is I've weathered them down with some Humber weathering powders and sealed it with varnish. Just take the neat pure grey off them. Now they're not going to be heavily weathered because it's the late 80s and part of the East Coast main line was just finished, you know, in 88, 89, so we're pretty new here regarding to the installation, so they're not heavily dirtied and weathered and rusted. So that's why I've gone for a subtle toning down of the Humber 64 grey, which is what I sprayed them in to start with. This here will probably give you a better look at how I've gone about making the overhead masts and cables. It's very much a fragile task to make with the 0.45mm wire, but once it's all soldered it does actually become quite robust. I wouldn't go throwing it around, so again that's why I waited till this point to put it in, where I don't have to lift a lot of materials and do any building round about it to risk damaging it. And the final bit of work I've been doing this month, or over the last couple of months, is rebuilding the back scene at the east end of the layout. These are completely new boards and they've been painted, and I've fitted new self-adhesive back scenes to, you know, the actual board construction. They're exactly the same as they were before, you know, the same scene, same trees, etc. But the other one has sustained some damage from the back, and instead of taking off the section of self-adhesive back scene and repairing it and then painting it and then putting a new one on, I thought let's just do it all properly. So I used good quality birch ply on a frame that I've used in the past and painted it with water-based gloss, applied several coats of that, and then put on the self-adhesive back scenes from ID Back Scenes, and that's the brand of back scene I've used at all parts of the layout. Just before I go, I'd like to remind you of the Worley National Model Rail Exhibition on at the NEC in Birmingham on the 24th and 25th of November 2018. If you click on the link at the top of the screen, you'll be able to go to the Worley ticket competition and enter that to get free tickets to this year's show. Well, that's it for the October update. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen. It might not look visually like a lot of work's been done, but behind the scenes with the prep of the backboards, for example, the painting and the prep for the fencing, the postcrete, the testing of different materials to see which look best for the actual ground cover and the building site. All these things take time, and you're juggling it in with other things in life. So within the next week or so, I hope to have really finished off this building scene site and work on the next section. But if you have any questions of what you've seen, please do get in touch. I enjoy reading your comments and I try to respond to as many as I can. Thanks just now. I hope you've enjoyed that video. If you have, why not check out one of my earlier videos? Or if you'd like something from the Network South East region, click on Richard from Everard Junction. The links are on the screen.